recapping, what we're doing here is trying to get a handle on who we need to bring in to the room for you next Saturday. Not next Saturday, because you'll be voting in the election, the Saturday after. When I say next Saturday, you know I mean the 9th, okay? Next time, the next Saturday we're together. So this piece of work, and we'll have another look at this tomorrow, because what we go through tomorrow with our expert 8 might answer some of these questions. So we're going to have another look at it tomorrow and say, is that still right? And then we'll get busy getting those people into the room. One thing that we have done while you've been working is that we've talked to Chad and Lucy and Greg, who were just here from the Royal Commission. What they've offered to do is, if you're comfortable, to be one of you on base camp and answer any questions that might emerge on base camp that you have of the Royal Commission, and they'll just be there keeping a lookout on questions that they can answer. So if you're comfortable with that, if you're uncomfortable with that, let me know. I think it was just going to be Lucy. Where's Madeline gone? Chad? Sorry, Jordan?
So Lucy said that they're very happy to answer questions, but for your comfort, that they probably won't join base camp, but they're happy to questions.
Oh, posted, and we'll direct them to them. Excellent. Good. So if that's okay, that might just help tick us along, and of course we can invite Royal Commission team back into the room if we need them. Okay, so what the piece of work that you've just been doing is starting to think about witnesses, and I have taken the liberty of rewriting your themes in one word things. So I'm randomly going to select someone. I'm getting the really hard ones first. Oh, I'm going to select environment to go first because you've been ready for a while. So what I need is a special someone to give us a bit of a sense of the discussion and also who you're thinking of. Who's going to do it? Can you pass around the mic or hold it for David? And what I'll do is I'll capture it up here.
Just recap what we've written.
Okay, so this was about, you can stand on the stage if you want.
Oh, I don't want to.
Nor do I.
Okay, you just want me to recap what we've written here?
Yeah, so you need into the mic nice and loud because we're live streaming. So it's just a sense of what are the things that spring to mind for you about it? What sort of questions do we need to ask, and who would be a trusted witness?
Okay, so our subject was environment, and the questions that spring to mind are the dedicated infrastructure that they're talking about putting in to carry the nuclear waste. I mean, it's roadways, it's pads, it's various other things, ports, specialised port facilities. What effect these may have on the environment and the immediate environment and the long-term effects. There's radiation effects on flora and fauna if there was some sort of accident or accidental release of radiation. The effects on agriculture as well would have to be considered. And one of the big factors too is the potential pollution of aquifers from the deep storage of fuel if there are some leaks. So what the next question is, questions the community might ask, I guess they would probably be asking exactly the same questions that we've asked. So that made it a bit difficult to answer, but we came in addition to that, what steps will be taken to reduce the risks and where will the dump site possibly be located? And I know that's not something the Royal Commission covered, but I think it's certainly going to be questions that the public are going to be asking. The next one is if witnesses, do you want that?
Yeah, so with the next bit, Ilka and Jordan are sitting up here, so just to give you a little bit of context before we do go into that, is that the list that we provided you, which was sort of your starting base list to give you something, was developed by Ilka and Jordan from two perspectives. So Ilka's from our team, so done a whole heap of independent research and work with stakeholders and also understanding what you guys had already identified. So we've already been trying to find some people, and Jordan's contribution has been, I suppose, the subject matter experts who have come in from the Royal Commission report. So there's this whole raft of really technical expertise, and we've joined them together. We've smashed them together. No, we've artistically layered them together, as I learned from one of our camera crews the other day, to try and give you a balance between the two. So anything you want to add before then, and we'll come back to you, David. Jordan?
I'll just add one thing, which I didn't mention when I introduced myself before. I work for the Royal Commission, and I was brought on to look at the social and community consent aspects in particular.
Okay, good.
So I can help answer any questions about the witnesses that the Commission engaged that you might have.
Great. The other thing to say is that all the people on that list have already given us their consent to be there and come and talk to you. So we've done a bit of homework to say, if the jury called you, would you be willing?
Can I just give a bit more contextual information for the list? Is this the right point to do it, do you think?
Yes, and then we'll come back to environment. Sorry, we should have done it before we started, David.
Okay, you would like me to do that? Yeah. Okay, I think the first thing to say is I never imagined I would have a former Premier of this state on my mobile phone contact list, so that's been a bit exciting for me in working to develop this list for you. Can I say it is very much a work in progress. There's been a lot of input to this list. The most important input was yours as jurors through the survey, but that came relatively recently. So what we had to do at Democracy Co is think, what are all of the things that are likely to be on your mind? Who are all of the people you may want to hear from a range of perspectives, to come up with a list that you can trust in. Then we spoke with a whole range of stakeholders and said, who do you think are important witnesses that jurors should consider? It's a very, very tricky balancing act for us, because there's a sort of admin task, which is to say, might you be available, if called, on Saturday the 9th of July, to 85 people who are in Finland, Sweden, interstate, living in remote communities here in South Australia, who have their own families, their own professions, a whole lot of other stuff going on as well. So we had to say, might you be available if the jurors want to hear from you? So we have 85 people we've said that to, and there's going to be a number that you are going to tell us to be in touch with. So tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to be calling people to say the jurors would like to hear from you. Say you want to hear from 20, we're going to have 65 who we said you might want to hear from that may have a view about that, and then there's going to be a whole lot of other people you might come up with. The only other thing to say is you asked for some people, and stakeholders asked for some people who I contacted, and they opted out. And there are people that several of you asked for with a very wide range of views who decided not to be involved in this process. So you might say someone's name, and I will need to say that person decided not to be involved. We didn't exclude anyone, but people may have decided to exclude themselves.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ilka, really important. And the other thing too is that the list is not exhaustive, so, we can draw on others who you think can provide some input. Okay, David, so back to you. What did you come up with? Who was on your list?
Well, we just took it from, what was available to us there, and chose Dr. Ian Chessel of the Goyder Institute,
Can you tell me why? That was about water, wasn't it? That was about the water interaction. I think you were, yeah.
Yeah, aquifers and things. And Professor Ian Lowe from Griffith Uni.
Yeah. Yep.
Lisa Van Camp, who's an environmental scientist.
Yeah.
And Dr. Jim Green from Friends of the Earth.
Okay, don't mind my scribbling, but how does that look to the rest of you? So you've got someone similar on your list, so that's good. This is good. But in general, think about this list. Is that kind of, so Goiter Institute about water, Ian Lowy, who you would know and have heard of probably from Griffith Uni, Lissa Van Camp, who's an environmental scientist in Adelaide, and Jim Green from Friends of the Earth. Looking okay? Yeah.
A bit of balance.
Just one on it, that protest was Friends of the Earth,
Yes.
just so,
That's why we
if that's,
went with them, just so that there's one from the real left-hand side sort of thing. So we've
Okay.
got scientists and then somebody who's just going to be very negative.
It's a case of balance.
Yeah, cool. And we'll see how we go. All right, so no major objections, and what we end up with on the 9th will just depend on people's availability, of course, but let's have a crack. All right, well done. Good job, team 1. Okay. Oh, applause. You get applause. I work all day and get no applause. Okay. Thank you. Okay, safety is you guys. Okay. We'll grab you on mic. So just a bit of an overview and then, yeah.
So the things that we thought came to mind for us were risk management, site selection, so things to do with the seismic safety, the water safety, geological aspects, potential risk of terrorism, health risks and transport.
It's a big one.
So what we thought others in the community might ask about the topic, we tried to sort of take ourselves back to before we read the Royal Commission report. And the first thing was, how dangerous is it? What could go wrong? And what are the consequences after something goes wrong? So do I just go through the witnesses now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stephen McIntosh, we thought would be good to hear from for risk management. For site selection, we'd like to hear from David Jepson from Geoscience Australia or Dr. Stephen Hill. For the terrorism, we thought John Carlson. For health risks, Dr. Carl Magnus Larsen. And for transport, Alistair Brown.
Okay, I'm going to grab these off you, these sheets off you, so that we've got that detail. How's that sounding for you? That's a really big, as I said earlier, safety is like the biggest thing. Missed anything? Anything you want to add?
We had Steve Hill.
I've got him. Jepson or Hill? Okay, I'll grab you a proper list. I'm just scribbling. Really? Just to do something. Well done. Okay. All right, so general happiness. And I really appreciate that you haven't had the chance with the other groups to think this through. That's why we're going to look at it again tomorrow. Okay, next on my list is education. Education. So this was about how do we give other people that experience that we've had, and how do we start to educate? Yes?
Yep. So our thoughts on the subject for education of the public and explanation of the fuel cycle. A tool. What are the tools really to be able to educate people? So our first question was, how do you best simplify topics for public consumption? Whether the group is also concerned about the education in schools, particularly STEM subjects, so that people have the background to be able to make an informed decision on these. But that's a very long-term sort of issue, but nevertheless. And also how best to make information available on these specific subjects, whether that be uranium, radiation risks. So what are the best tools available for public education?
Okay.
What questions might others in the community ask? Just on the broader side, what are the risks and benefits of the fuel cycle and nuclear products in general? just to put radiation in health as pros and cons. So we'll be talking about that on the one side versus accidents and
Yeah, okay.
negative outcomes on the other side.
Yep.
How to understand the management of risk in general. That's and again, another generic topic, but unless you understand the ideas behind that and the process behind that, you won't have much confidence in those who make the decisions about this, because something has risks doesn't necessarily mean that it should not be done. So how to put that in the context, I think, was important. And also, on the subject of education, where there is a lack of education, that in itself breeds fear. So there are many fears in the community about this type of topic. So provision of information should hopefully allay some of those fears.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So on the subject of witnesses, I think it falls into two categories. There's the content and the method. So if our problem is education, we should have an education expert available to witness. And I don't think there are any examples in there of that topic. And on the subject of scope, then the Commission representatives earlier had mentioned that there was the head of our Panza had a specific knowledge about disposal or experience in the disposal field. His name might be Coates, but we're not sure of that.
Jordan?
Larson.
Larson.
Carl Magnus Larson is the head of ARPANSA.
Yeah, okay. Appears on the other list. Oh, there was someone, Coates. Who's that? Jordan.
The person we were
Coates?
talking about is a radiation safety officer for
Yeah.
South Australia.
Did you-
Coates? Was it
did-
Coates?
That was mentioned earlier by Chad, but Barney Coat from Geoscience?
Yeah, I don't know. Someone Coates.
He was
Yeah, all right, we'll follow that up.
South Australian radiation officer.
Okay. Yeah, no, we don't know. So we'll have a look through that. So
So it would Coates, education expert, disposal experts, and I think there are a couple of examples on the list there. Uzonian.
so is that people with experience in waste disposal?
Yes.
Is that what you're looking
Yes.
for there? Yeah, okay.
To identify what topics
Yeah, all right.
are important to be educated on.
All right, I'm going to throw to maybe Jordan for this. So what we've got on our list is people who can help us think about how to educate, so education experts, which probably is not you, and then people with expertise and experience in the industry who have gone
Yeah.
through that education.
Exactly so.
Okay, all right, just checking if I picked it up right, who have educated others.
Off the top of my head, I'm not actually sure, so I might have to take that
Okay.
question on notice, and we'll
We
come
can do
back to
some
you.
more. Yeah, all right, we'll do some more research. So is that heading in the right direction for you guys? It's a little bit, this is where it gets messy because it's not a particular person necessarily. Ian?
I was going to say I can come in on this because normally we get given very ambiguous requests
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
My question for that table is, when you say an education expert, who is it that you would trust? Now, are you looking for someone within the university sector who effectively trains teachers? Are you looking for someone within a government agency such as an education agency? Are you after someone who runs community education programs such as Quit Smoking? If you can put some time into that, as long as you give us clarity as to type, then it's non-subjective for us to pursue. So consider that. On the disposal, we can reach out through some of the international agencies.
Yep.
So if that's a place where you think, is it from another jurisdiction? Give us some clarity around who it is you would trust, and we can refine that through the afternoon. We just need no subjectivity. Give us the type of person, and we can make the person match.
Yep. Good.
I can add, Emily, the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation has nuclear educators, and we could go to ANSTO. There are some ANSTO people on the list, we could go back to ANSTO and say, who is one of your nuclear educators? Who engages with communities at their Discovery Centre? We can ask them if they can make someone available to us.
Okay.
For you.
Maybe. All right.
But the gap is not only about nuclear, the
Need a
nuclear
microphone,
fuel
Chris.
cycle. The gap is also about elementary physics.
Yes. So as you said this morning.
Yep.
So, which is, yes.
Really more
generational.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and maybe that's part of the role for what happens between, you know, over this whole journey about how an education program is layered in. Okay, which brings me to the consensus group. You had the benefit of the international expert at your table, so I hope that you've come up with amazing clarity. I suspect you haven't. No, I'm only joking. Sorry, not at you, Kyle. Marcel.
We did appreciate, Kyle, your input. You helped us refine what we thought was pretty broad. The questions we kind of came up with was, how do we make the whole consensus and consultation process or engagement transparent and inclusive? And one of the things that Kyle brought up was, how do we measure the success of that community engagement? So we thought that was pretty good. Some of the other questions for the other communities, questions others in the community would ask is, we were looking at how would the rural and agricultural community be engaged? Because there will be an impact at a site level and maybe a transport level, and also how the Aboriginal community and the local communities are going to be engaged. So if the facility went ahead, or if a new mine went ahead, the port, the infrastructure to get the stuff to and from the new thing, whether it's a waste facility or mine or whatever. So some of the witnesses we were thinking of was Gil McFadden from Community Centres SA, and Keith Thomas from the SA Native Title Services.
Keith is in tomorrow. Got him.
Professor Hank Jenkins Smith, he's from Oklahoma. I can't remember exactly. He was engaged in the past in the US, so lessons learned. So he was a professor of political science and the general principles of a nuclear facility siting and community engagement. So kind of been there, done that. Lessons learnt, what worked, what didn't. The whole impact on future generations list, which is Anne Bainbridge, Ros Walmsley, Gil McFadden we've already mentioned, and Simon Longstaff, because it's the youth that are going to have to carry this along.
Yeah, and you've got Simon tomorrow as well from the Ethics Centre.
Oh, great. And then the impact on regions, which was Cecilia Woolford and Kellyanne Saffin.
And you've got Kellyanne too, look at that.
And we thought Jordan as well, because he would know, as part of the Royal Commission, in engaging from that process, you know, what worked for them to get the communities involved and to be informed and learn about it.
I'm also wondering, for that one, a thought that I had as I walked away was about getting some information to you in some shape or form about what's planned for the next few months at least. So there's an Aboriginal engagement, Parry's gone, an Aboriginal engagement strategy being developed. Oh, there he is. Sorry, Parry, couldn't see you there. And so, you know, what are those strategies that are being developed and designed in order to tap into some of those communities? That's only for the next little while, but how you take that and use it forward. So it may be about giving you some information about that as well.
Great. And also, if someone was involved in Finland or France in their waste management facilities, and how did they implement, engage, and how did it work? How did they measure it?
I think we had one of them, didn't we?
So we tried to do that. The last point, you know, what choices do we need to make as a state about this topic is that it has to be informed.
Yeah, okay. Really tricky and intricate element, but really critical.
Who was the guy from the Royal Commission?
Greg?
Greg. He said, if you don't take them along, It ain't going to work.
Yeah, yeah, and the Premier said that to you too this morning, so good. Okay, so generally going in the right direction with that one. So it could be partly about at least getting a little bit of information to you, I think, which would help fill in some gaps, and also thinking through who could speak to some of those things. And we'll revisit that again after tomorrow, because there's a couple of people, there's 3 people on that list that are in tomorrow as part of the Expert 8. Yes, you need a microphone though, Millicent.
It's a very simple question. How many people who are here today are from the country?
There are 11. There are 11. 11.
Say, but it's proportional to the
Plus
percentage
me.
of country people in South Australia.
Plus me.
So there's 11.
And you. Okay. All right, so let's keep going. So the next one is another hard one. I don't need that. Why do I do that? Is trust. Trust. Righto.
Okay, in terms of questions, both by ourselves as well as the greater community, firstly, what would need to happen to be able to start debating at state and federal level to change the current legislation? How would regulation be enforced that would be free of government involvement? And then to that, then how can the regulators be regulated? A corruption watch, particularly if you're talking this sort of money. Overall, how do you actually maintain that integrity?
A citizen regulator. Here we go.
In terms of trust, how can we trust future politicians to not change policies that may be put in place as part of this process? How can an independent regulator be free of government or industry intervention and then remain completely independent? Before I go through witnesses, I'll just jump down to choices as a state, because I think it goes to the list of witnesses that we've put together. First of all, obviously, the federal position, as well as state, of both houses of parliament across all parties. So bipartisan support is mandatory for this type of thing to happen. The review the processes from current countries that are actually putting regulations in place, because there's already these type of things happening, particularly in Europe as well as the US, so we don't have to recreate the wheel. So there is a starting platform in terms of regulation. And probably the key point in terms of choices, of course, is there a need to actually change the legislation in the first place? Should the legislation in terms of the nuclear fuel cycle stay? But we also know that as a country we need to change our reliance on CO2 producing power stations. So what do we need to do to address that, or is this all just about money? So the witnesses that we've put down is Dr. Mark Diesendorf, who is actually an economist that looks at renewable energy and compares it to nuclear options. So that goes back to this need of change. Do we need to go down this path at all? Yep. Keith Baldry, who is a regulator of nuclear activities. Rod Campbell, who is also an economist, and he actually looks at the benefits of the a fuel cycle high-level waste, which we've been talking about today. Professor Hayden Manning, who has looked at the politics of uranium mining in Australia. And again, he would have some insight in terms of how the policymakers work in this particular scope. And the last is Jack Dillage, who has looked as an expert of regulation in terms of nuclear activities and also transport of nuclear product. And that goes to the sort of the regulation side of the process.
How do I spell his name?
Dillich. Dillage.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, thanks. I need a spell checker on the whiteboard. Okay, how's that sounding? It's really important, like it's this, trust is this really nebulous thing, isn't it? But as soon as you start thinking about, you know, it's about decision making and how we make them and how we keep track of that, you know, it's actually really central to this whole discussion. Anything missing from that would be on your minds? Have they nailed it? Look at you guys, doing well. Good job.
Excuse me, Emily,
Yes.
Ilka over
Yes.
here.
Oh, there you are.
Yes,
Yes.
Ilka,
Yeah,
remember? I just wanted to check in with you because Jordan and I were asked to report back on behalf of a group where one member had to leave early and another member is a person who would rather have Jordan and I on camera than that person.
So what group
on
was
world perception.
Okay.
Would you like us to do it at the end of everyone else's?
Yeah, not
or
yet,
now?
because I've just stuck up future technology.
I didn't
So you're
see you
too
do
late.
that. Sorry.
You're too late.
Okay.
Okay. So future technology. Right.
Good afternoon. As we went through the template that you gave us, we discussed other options.
You have to put the mic close.
Yep. Is that better? What developing technologies might be available, e.g. new type reactors that utilise more of the fuel? What other power technologies are available? And what new technologies could there be in the same time frame that may reduce the waste products? And what would investment in current and future sustainable power technologies reap the same financial and employment benefits? And also keeping the public informed and up to date about what future technologies are out there. Questions in the community are the new types of technology safe in terms of the new types of reactors, the carbon and pollution aspects of any new technology, considerations of timelines between developing a storage facility and also what may become available in new technologies during that time, making the storage facility void, and the need perhaps for a national fuel waste and energy policy throughout the country. And the witnesses we had asked for were Stephen McIntosh, Professor Ian Lowe, Anthony Thomas from Adelaide Uni.
Was he the guy that went up to the moon? Astronaut?
No, different one.
That's Andy Thomas, sorry.
Andy.
Yes, she's not in charge of the witness list.
I'm not.
She's not.
Clearly.
And Dr. Leslie Dewan, Dewan, who's not on the list, but... And what choices do we need to make as a state about this topic? Do we really need to be a dump for everybody else's waste? And can we invest in other better technologies?
Yeah, good. Nice job. It's so apart from the witnesses, that starting to understand those choices in front of us is a really important thing. It's where we're really, I think the richness will come out in this product that you guys produce for everyone else. Okay, so how are we thinking about that? On the right track in terms of future technologies? Anything surprising or missing? Cost? Okay, might be picked up in the economics bit. Okay, let's have a look at that because that might answer that question. Okay, economics. Who was doing that? You guys? No? Who did economics? Ah, you guys did, Nick. Okay. Well done, future tech people.
Yeah, well, that's... All right, so from an economic point of view, we've got quite a long list of questions. Sorry?
Yeah, you have to hold that mic nice and close.
We'd be looking for a list of assumptions on the costs and the benefits. What's a guesstimate? What's data-based? That sort of thing. How do we ensure that any future fund actually remains available for future generations? There's a bit of a history of knee-jerk reactions and short-term spending.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Are we factoring in new technology? Are we burying any, I guess, future opportunity if there's a future value identified in any waste? Who's going to be taking the accountability and who will own or manage any storage facility, whether it be public or private? Just a comment on the economic evaluation that a 4% cost of capital is quite optimistic. Some more questions. How much disaster management has been factored into the economic evaluation? How much taxation will be taken at a federal or state level? How can the NPV of a disposal facility be broken down into a language that a common person can understand? I guess including the understanding the relative scale of any benefit. So you can pretty much just put it in perspective. Have we factored any cyclical financial recession challenges in the economic modelling? And if we were to go into a contract with another country, what happens if they go bankrupt? And just skipping the witnesses for now, the choices we need to make as a state. Is the business case of any storage facility sufficiently stress tested to give confidence of a long-term economic benefit? And why not present a range analysis detailing, I guess, the low range estimates rather than just the nominal? The witnesses we've listed, so Professor Richard Blandy. Blandy. Is it Dr. Sammy Hortakangas or Hustakangas?
I don't know. It's okay. Yep.
Hautakangas.
H-A-U-T. Sorry, say again. H-A-U-T.
Hautakangas.
Yes, yeah. Anyway, you know what that is. We'll pick that up later.
We've got Rod Campbell.
Rod Campbell again, yep.
And Professor Paul, was it Karen?
Rob Karen.
Paul Karen.
Oh, Paul Karen. Okay. How's that looking to the rest of you? That's a big list. Don't look at the size of the list. Cool. Yeah.
Just one other area. Sorry, just one other area on economics is the labour side of it. You know, they've.
Oh, the workforce stuff.
Yes,
yeah. Okay.
There's a lot of work in there in terms of the amount of money that we can generate from taking somebody else's waste and disposing of it, but the amount of jobs that can be created. And you assume it would come somewhere out of the Iron Triangle area, which is devastated at the moment with the mining and everything else. So that could be an option. That something needs to be factored into the economics of the whole thing is the generation, which obviously comes taxes and everything else that can support it.
I'm going to ask you follow-up, which might come to you or the room. An idea of the kind of person or group that could talk to that? Is this a unions thing? Is it, what is it? Ilka? Any insights?
Is it John Spur?
John Spear.
Spear?
Yeah.
Spur.
Spear.
Spear.
Yeah.
Spear, sorry.
He was on our...
Yeah. One question we do, have around this was that, how we will build that nuclear capability or the skill set in our workforce, because at the moment, if we look at our curriculum structure, it is just missing. But the thing is that if we start going down that path, there will be a good long gestation period. So hopefully we can change that. But then, of course, it all needs to fit into that program of work, how we create the right skill sets to achieve that.
Yeah, so that capacity building element for society, which links a bit to the education stuff too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Marcel? He turned it off on his way to you.
I was just thinking, a futurist? We're looking at decades into the future. Is someone with a futurist mindset to give us some context? And also include the lotto numbers.
No, let's not get a psychic. That's okay. We'll just take it to a different place.
So there's some futurist people that
Yeah, yep.
could put something, I guess.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you know Kristen? Kirsten Orford. Kristen. Anyway, I'll just put Orford because I know her. Okay, good. All right, so starting to nail that a bit about sort of the economics and the sort of the business case around it, then the workforce development end, and then the futurist. Okay, good. All right. Impact on Aboriginal communities. Okay, are you taking the lead, Khadija, or someone else?
Well,
oh, she's got the microphone.
Our group, yeah. Well, once I've got it, yeah. Anyway, our group is a bit halfy, black and red lanyards. So
that's okay.
Help me out, black lanyard folk. So what are some of the questions that spring to mind? Just want me to read those questions out?
Yeah. So just give us a bit of a sense of the conversation.
I was only here for half the conversation, you guys. Okay, so we wanted to know, there was a lot of questions around like the already existing experience in South Australia of Aboriginal peoples with the nuclear radiation, I suppose.
History,
Yep. So some of those questions are around what is the exclusion zone around the site? What are the main concerns about living adjacent to a storage site? What risk mitigations should be put in place? The direct benefits and disadvantages and advantages to communities, Aboriginal communities. There was also a discussion that with the question that was put forward, that it's not just we put in there especially Aboriginal communities, but also a broader question about all remote communities, but in particular or especially Aboriginal. So when we were choosing our witnesses, we also wanted to add at least one person, Cecilia Woolford, who had the broader rural, regional communities expertise.
She's the chair of the Outback Communities Authority.
So we put her on there, and then the rest we've put Eunice Marsh, Wanda Miller and Mima Smart, also because we knew Keith and Karina are coming tomorrow. And then we had an idea of putting Bob Watts on to hear about an international experience and perspective of Indigenous peoples in Canada as well.
Yeah, good.
What else? So some of the other questions that we put forward afterwards is, would a waste facility affect your ability to practice your law and culture? How does your past experience with nuclear radiation influence your current views and decision making? What are the deal breaker considerations for you, either for or against? What strategies are proposed to manage the cost to future generations of any clean-up and relocation of whole communities, which is an already existing experience in South Australia as well. And then my concern that I put particularly, but I think is covered very well in the Royal Commission report, is that issue of free, prior and informed consent for Aboriginal people, and the values and protection of Aboriginal heritage, including sites, cultural practice and environmental heritage. That is all.
Amazing. Really great questions, I think. Really, I'm just a bit astounded at the level of questions that you've got to so quickly as a whole group, because I think it just shows the thought that you've done coming into the room. So well done on that that list. Is any gaps, or is there anything missing? Yeah. Oh. Sorry. Oh, it's off. Gave you a dead duck. There you go.
Yeah, I was tossing up whether to sit on the education or the future tech, but one of the things that I suppose was that sprung to mind for myself, and I've just had a quick look through the witness list, is power systems moving into the future, centralised versus distributed systems, with a lot of people potentially going off-grid. Is there anyone in this witness list that potentially offer some insight into battery storage, because I'm sorry. If in 50 years' time, majority of people are using solar and battery storage, the requirement for a storage facility for nuclear waste might not be as high.
Okay, we can add it up to the list and have a look and see. Some of the conversations tomorrow might reach into that area. So, and if they don't, we'll pick it back up again. All right, good, thank you. All right, so we've got one more to go, which is Ilka, about global perceptions, which is not Ilka.
It's absolutely not Ilka. It's Ilka on behalf of a huge team of jurors of two, one of whom who'll be listening to keep me honest here. So what Jordan and I understood from how your fellow jurors explained to us, they said that they saw two main issues in terms of world perception of South Australia if there was an expansion. And the first was about about our clean, green image and our exports, agriculture, also tourism. And the other was about, I think it was described as lots of people don't know a whole lot about South Australia, know a lot about other states. What if the wrong people, there was some language used which I'm not going to repeat, the wrong people started to know about Australia for the wrong reasons. I think that's about a security and safety and potential for terrorism is how it was described to us with different language. And so the questions that others in the community might ask, will we be known as the world's dumping ground? Or will there be a perception about the safety of our food and produce? The witnesses that this enormous group requested were Darren Thomas from Brand SA and also his own business on the witness list, someone from the Economic Development Board, someone, the Chief Executive of Tourism SA, and a person from the armed forces and or police. We got anyone left outside we could bring in for a minute? Do you think, yeah? Okay.
Okay. How do we go? Anything that you would add? So some overlap there about security is what I picked up there, but that's okay. Yeah. Here comes a microphone. Ian's earning his keep.
I'm going to ask a dumb question here.
Beautiful.
What is the object of our exercise for these 4 days? Are we presenting a pamphlet, as you showed earlier in the day, to hand out to Joe the public?
Yep.
Because if we're going to put up all of those things that are on the board there and cover all of those aspects there, we're going to have a sheet that's bigger than the
Royal Commission report.
well, the Senate elections in New South Wales and Victoria.
Yeah.
To me, there's a number of things up there which do not make something that should be on that sheet. For example, future tech. I mean, it's a pie in the sky. Why should we be discussing future tech when we're trying to explain to you know, a 17-year-old or 18-year-old kid who's about to vote on something or other, who's got very little knowledge of anything in this regard? What is the point of putting all this stuff, a lot of that stuff there in that particular sheet? Because to me, it's pointless.
Yeah. So, and I won't talk about specific things, but that's absolutely part of my brutal simplicity. The plan. That was a great quote this morning. I wrote that down from the Premier. But our challenge is to say, how much do we go into this, and how much do we just say we need to talk about it? So what I'm going to propose to you is that overnight I put this together for you into something that makes sense, and we'll have a look at it tomorrow. We'll actually have a look at it a couple of times, because what you are about to do tomorrow is hear from 8 people who can probably cover and meet some of these questions that you've got, and you're day 1 into 4 days of your time together. So, but it's actually something we need to resolve by the end of tomorrow around how deep do we go? So therefore, how many witnesses do we really, really need? And, you know, what's the scope of what we're trying to do. So while we have a general picture, it's exactly what the purpose of developing this over a couple of days is to do, to ask some of those questions. So I'm really pleased that you've left that in the room for us to ponder overnight. And if that's okay, I'm going to set you your homework for tonight, which is to think about that exact question. How much do we need to go deeply into the topic in order to help the community talk about this stuff? Okay? Is that okay? A little bit of a thought piece over dinner and a very well-deserved glass of red wine, South Australian, of course. So we're kind of getting close to time, and I just thought we might finish the chunk of work there for the day. There's lots of questions. We'll put this in a document for you to have tomorrow morning.